Welcome into the Golf Preview Podcast on Pregame's Network. I'm your host, Will Doctor. Nice to have you with us as I bring you the sharpest picks for the latest PGA Tour event. A lot of energy, a lot of focus. Let's get it rolling. And ready to roll for Week 7 at the Mexico Open as the PGA Tour heads to Vidanta Vallarta for some coastal golf before the start of the Florida swing. Nice to have you aboard as we are coming off an abysmal Week 6 card where we lost 7.2 units at the Genesis Invitational, and the dock market is now down 38 units on the season. Second straight season of just horrible predictions around the California swing. We'll get to the card review in a moment. Ludwig Aberg picked up PGA Tour win number 2 last week at Torrey Pines South in comeback fashion, playing the final 6 holes and 4 under par to shoot 12 under for the week. Aberg beat out a surging Maverick McNeely by 1, and Scottie Scheffler and Patrick Rodgers finished in a tie for third at 9 under. McNeely had the low round of the week with a final round 64 after sitting 9 under through 13 holes in the final round. McNeely looked to be in complete control of the golf tournament, but just couldn't finish on a strong note, playing the last 5 and 1 over, while Aberg did the total opposite on that closing stretch. Just crushed it. Aberg slowly worked his way back in that tournament after opening in 74. 66, 70, 66 were his final 3 rounds at Torrey Pines South. And I regrettably passed on Aberg last week at 25-1 after he was ill at the Farmers and still under the weather at Pebble Beach. He said he had lost 10 pounds over the last 2 weeks before the tournament. But he also said he was looking for revenge over what happened during Farmers Week when he opened 63 and was unable to finish what he started due to that illness that remains unspecified. The superstar Swede was all over it last week with 19 birdies and 2 eagles and led the field in strokes gained all week. Now, I failed to get you aboard the winning ticket of Aberg's second PGA Tour win. I told you when the season started that Aberg would pick up his second win, maybe third PGA Tour win before the Masters, where we have him at 14-1 from December. But it is beyond frustrating to miss that second win. It's like Spieth's second win at the 2015 Valspar. It's like Tiger's second major win at Medina in 99. They are tone-setting victories that open up the floodgates. I complained about 25-1 for Aberg last week, and you may not see that number again for Aberg for a while. So that is a massive miscue on my part. Let's go over the Genesis card that saw me pick a lineup full of losers for the 6th straight week in a row. Let's start with the 2 outrights. We had Colin Morikawa to win at 16-1, along with his top 10 ticket at plus 150. Morikawa finished tied 17th after rounds of 73, 72, 73, 67. It was a great final round for Morikawa. But the bottom line is he was never in this golf tournament due to subpar ball striking in the first and third round of the Genesis. The tee balls were not atrocious for Morikawa, but he was not winning that golf tournament last week, only hitting 41 of 72 greens. And I obviously really liked Morikawa after the ball striking performance he put on at Kapalua and Pebble Beach. And I've really liked the way he struck the ball really since late June of last season. But that was far from the case at Torrey last week. You never got the feel over 4 rounds last week that he was striking the ball anywhere near the caliber of Aberg or McNeely, who we'll get to, or Scheffler or Rodgers. You never got that feel from Morikawa. And you never got the feel that he was coming for any of those guys at the top at any point last week. And both Morikawa tickets were losers. The other outright winner we had last week was Rasmus Højgaard at 40-1, and we also had Højgaard to top 10 after round one at plus 275. And Rasmus packed his bags Friday afternoon after opening 82-77 and finished DFL by 5 shots. We took Rasmus Højgaard, the 23-year-old Danish superstar who had not finished worse than 22nd over his last 5 events and was right there in Phoenix until he threw up all over himself down the closing stretch. We took Højgaard to contend at a major championship golf course that was presenting some of those same European conditions. And he opens 82-77 after only hitting 11 fairways and 16 greens in the first 2 rounds. And it was the first tournament Højgaard has lost shots as far as the approach since last July at the Scottish Open. And his course management in his first time around Torrey was a complete disaster. Now, we'll get to the tickets I largely regret last week. Fading McNeely, fading Scheffler, 2 horrible decisions, two tickets that were a total disservice that we'll get to. But I'm not letting last week alter my perception of what 2025 is going to be for Rasmus Højgaard. Now, there is an argument to be made that I shouldn't have touched him at a 7,700-yard golf course. That was wet, ball's not going anywhere, the rough's cabbage. And he hasn't been the most reliable driver over his career. I drove it well in his lead up to Torrey. And I'm not on him this week, but I am not letting last week throw any doubts in my mind that this guy's going to be a PGA Tour winner by the end of this season. Now, the other 3 picks to place, before we get to the largely regrettable matchups, let's go through reviewing these other 3 picks to place. We had Taylor Pendrith to top 20 at plus 125. That didn't cash as he finished in a tie for 50th after making the cut. We loved Pendrith after the top 10s at the Farmers and Pebble, and he had played very well at Torrey historically. And Pendrith had the driving week that we expected him to have, as he was second in the field in strokes gained off the tee, but the irons and the putter were not even close from being in a place where he could contend. And he ends up having his worst week from fairway to green since the Sony Open, where we also had him. So in this great run of top 20 golf Pendrith has had since late July, I've struck out on him twice in his only 2 bad performances to start the season at the Sony and the Genesis. It's just pitiful. It's just horrible. Now, we also had Adam Scott to top 20 at plus 210. He finished 37th in a week where he was sitting around the top 10 after the second round and hit the ball beautifully for most of the week. 16th in strokes gained off the tee, 11th in approach. But Adam Scott, kind of like Rory, who we'll get to, Adam Scott could not buy a putt last week at Torrey Pines, losing 4 shots to the field on the greens. And Adam Scott did not putt well at Pebble Beach either. And I feel I banked a little too hard on his past success at Torrey rather than the fact that he had lost shots on the greens in 3 of his last 5 events going into Torrey. So I will absolutely chalk up last week's Adam Scott top 20 ticket as a bad read. And then the only pick to place that cashed was Tony Finau at top 20 at plus 150 as he finished tied for 5th in what was such a roller coaster week for Big Tony. Opened 76 in the bad weather, shot 69 on Thursday, and then Friday he shoots 67, only hitting 9 greens in regulation. And this was a week where Finau led the field in strokes gained chipping. Played very solid after that first round. He closed out in 68, playing alongside tournament winner Ludwig Aberg in that final round. And credit to Justin Ray Golf on this one. Put this out after the third round. Finau is the only player in the last 40 years to shoot 67 or better at Torrey Pines South, hitting 9 greens or less. That is some serious elite chipping. And course management. Tony was missing in the right spots all week at Torrey. Tony hit it okay off the tee last week. Lost a bit as far as the driving accuracy was concerned, but made up for it completely with good iron play and great chipping last week. Now, the matchups. Let's start with the two biggest mistakes of last week, which was fading Scottie Scheffler and fading Maverick McNeely. And I'm not sure which one was a bigger disservice. We took Rory McIlroy over Scottie Scheffler at plus 125. And these two were heading into the final round all tied up in the same pairing. Scheffler hung around the top of the leaderboard despite poor driving in the first 2 rounds before a third round 76 dropped him back to a tie for 3 under alongside Rory going into Sunday. And just when you need Rory to come through, just when you're, blinded by the lights of what he did at Pebble, just when you think he's about to turn the corner on the greens, Rory McIlroy completely failed to deliver with the putter at the Genesis. Lost over 3.5 shots on the greens last week at Torrey Pines South in what was one of the worst weeks on the greens of his career. Now, he could not make a putt if it was in a paper bag right in front of him. And weeks like that on the greens are exactly why there's no futures ticket on Rory for the 2025 Major Championships. It's going to be his year at Augusta. The great Darren Clark thinks Rory is going to get some revenge on Port Rush. I'm not buying it. But the more important lesson there is to never fade Scottie Scheffler. This is the closest thing we have to Tiger Woods. I mean, Scottie finished 9th at Pebble, 25th in Phoenix, and tied 3rd at Torrey with his B- golf game. Last week, Scottie ranked 25th off the tee, 18th in approach, 2nd around the greens, and 21st in putting, and finished tied 3rd. And you're listening to someone who greatly profited on Scheffler's success from the 2022 WM Phoenix Open up until right before the 2024 Olympics when I had Rahm, Xander, Fleetwood there in Paris. All 3 of them choked it on Sunday while Scheffler stormed home with the gold. And it's almost like the last 5 months I've been waiting for Scheffler to come back to earth when in reality, the data is telling us he is the closest thing to Tiger Woods. So I'm finished with any Scheffler fades until further notice. That was really an unacceptable play on my part, and so was taking Will Zalatoris over Maverick McNeely at plus 117 on BetOnline. I was way too caught up with what the two of them had done historically at Torrey Pines rather than what have you done for me lately. Because Maverick McNeely has been putting on an iron play clinic over the last 4 months, has been in complete control of his ball striking. And I didn't like him last week because of some past driving accuracy and the overall course history at Torrey for McNeely. And it's not like the driving accuracy for McNeely was great last week, but he was missing it in all the right places. And Zalatoris did not play terrible. Finished 24th in a week where he struck it well, but the putter was not there. But the lesson there, once again, like Scheffler, 2 different caliber players, but fading McNeely was a huge mistake when he is clearly in complete control with his ball striking at the moment. And he was fresh off popping with the putter in Phoenix. So those two matchups, Scottie over Rory and Zalatoris over McNeely, along with the Adam Scott top 20 ticket, I would say were three controllable mistakes from last week. We lost the Sepp Straka over Sam Burns matchup. That was priced at minus 115 on Bovada. Burns played some good golf the first 2 days, ended up finishing 24th, while Straka just played some horrendous golf Thursday and Friday before missing the cut. But I can live with that. Straka has been playing well as of late. Burns didn't have it going heading into Torrey. Straka had the better course history at Torrey. I can live with that. And we cashed Harris English over Ben on at the halfway point. But you cannot make a reasonable case for fading Scheffler and McNeely last week. I got to do better than that. And we exit the California swing for the second year in a row down units heading into Mexico before the start of the Florida swing. This week, we will be looking at the best drivers of the golf ball along with those who are clicking with the approach, particularly with the long irons. And then we will focus on those who are rolling it well in the pass palm greens. You'll see a Vedanta. Order of play today. We'll be discussing the top 8 favorites on the odds boards for the Mexico Open. Then we will do 1 pick to place and 3 outrights. I'll give you a sleeper and a first-round leader. Sorry, 2 first-round tickets. Not a first-round leader, 2 first-round tickets, along with 2 lineups and a scoring prediction. And then we will wrap things up with the best bet. This is the sharpest preview for the Mexico Open. Buckle up. All right, let's discuss the top 8 favorites on the odds boards for Mexico. We start with Akshay Bhatia, who opened at 14-1 on 365. FanDuel, DraftKings, BetOnline, MGM, and Caesars. And Bhatia is the deserving favorite in this golf tournament, coming off a 9th place finish at Torrey Pines South, which was his first top 10 of the season. The overall driving numbers have really picked up for Bhatia over his last 2 events, and I don't expect that to change this week with how wide open the fairways are at Vedanta. Bhatia's iron play numbers have been, solid since Pebble Beach, and, they really popped in the right direction last week at Torrey. And when you look at the numbers, the putter has been Bhatia's greatest weapon so far this season, as he's looking for, his 12th event in a row where he's picked up shots on the greens. Obviously this is his 4th tournament competing in a row. At 23 years old, I'm not overly concerned about that. And this is an A-plus course fit for Bhatia. This is a 2-time PGA Tour winner who is the best player in the world on coastal golf courses. And outright number 1 for this week will be Akshay Bhatia at 14-1 on DraftKings. We move to Rasmus Højgaard, who opened at 20-1 on DraftKings, MGM, and Caesars. I don't know what kind of number this is. We had him at 40-1 last week at Torrey. He shoots 82.77, and Vegas drops his number down to 20-1. I know he's a future superstar, but that number should be illegal. The 4th week in a row on the road aspect for Højgaard, kind of like Bhatia. I'm not worried about that. He's 23 years old with fresh legs at the start of the season. Not awfully worried about that, but the number is horrible for Rasmus Højgaard this week. So I'm out on Rasmus this week. We move to Kurt Kitayama, who opened at 22-1 on FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, and Caesars. The last time Kitayama came and played the Mexico Open was in 2022, and he finished tied 2nd. I went back and looked how he had started the 2022 season, and it was flat out horrible. It was, the 22 Mexico Open was Kitayama's 14th event that season, and he had 1 finish better than 28th before he went into the Mexico Open that year. You look at the way Kurt has played over these last few months, and after a great fall, he has not finished better than 37th in 4 events this season. Now, I was on Kitayama outright in Phoenix, I believe at 40-1, because it was a course that you thought would set up well for him. And he hit the ball okay at TPC Scottsdale, but the putter was not there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kitayama have a solid ball striking week in Mexico, but the putting in Phoenix was flat out horrendous. I'm not saying he can't keep up, if the wind dies down there in the afternoons and this turns into somewhat of a putting contest, but he's not the rock roller you want on your card over 4 rounds of Vedanta. And we had him, I think it was somewhere between 40 to 47-1 in Phoenix. Now he's dropped to 22-1. I don't think so. I'm going to pass on Kitayama this week. We move to Sam Stevens, who opened at 25-1 on MGM. Stevens finished 31st last week at the Genesis Invitational, where he was positive across the board. He did lose just slightly in the chipping department, but I'm not real worried about that aspect of his game. He works with Joe Mayo, who is the best short game specialist on the planet. I'm obsessed with the work Stevens and Mayo do together. And this 7-week stretch to begin 2025 for Stevens has really been solid, with a second place finish at the Farmers and followed it up with 17th at Pebble. And that came after a great fall season that consisted of 3 top 25 finishes, most notably when he finished 6th at Diamante. 25-1 on his 7th event in a row. Stevens is another one I really like him to win at some point during this 2025 campaign, but I'm going to pass on him at 25-1 this week. We're now on to Patrick Rodgers, who opened at 25-1 on Caesars, and Rodgers was the 54-hole leader last week and is now 0 for 6 in converting 54-hole leads after a final round 71. My apologies, dropped him back to a tie for third. And despite the fallback on Sunday, despite the fact that he's now 0 for 6 and 54-hole leads, I really like the way Rodgers was talking about his fresh perspective on the game after the third round at the Genesis.
Playing with a lot of expectation. I need to play to achieve. That's what I've always set out to do, and it kind of felt like early in my career, with the amateur resume that I had, I felt like there was a lot expected of myself internally, and it was something where when immediate success, immediate wins didn't come straight away, it was kind of fighting who I saw myself to be honest with you. And so instead of playing with a monkey on your back that gets bigger and bigger over time, when it doesn't happen, I'm trying to play from a perspective that feels fresh and new and exciting and full of opportunity, because that's what this game is.
Couldn't get the job done on Sunday, but those were great words to hear from a guy who should absolutely have a PGA Tour win on his resume here. 288 starts into his career. Had the close call at the 23 CUDA, losing in a playoff to Akshay Bhatia, and then came up short this past week at Torrey. Tough deal for Patrick Rodgers, but loved that bite there from his post-round presser there after round 3. That was his second top 25 in his last 3 starts, and it was also the third event in a row that he was below average as far as the iron play, but Rodgers was phenomenal on and around the greens at Torrey Pines. Last week Rodgers drove it great, was third in the field off the tee. He did not hit his irons well. He lost just under 2.5 shots to the field as far as the approach was concerned. But he was absolutely electric on and around the greens. 4th in both departments as far as last week's stats. 4th as far as the chipping. 4th as far as the putting. And obviously there's a ton of talk around Patrick Rodgers, considering he's never finished outside the top 10 in 3 career starts at Vedanta. He's played well here over his career, and how he's played in the lead into Mexico hasn't mattered over the years. In 2022, Rodgers hadn't finished better than 38th in 12 stroke play events leading into the Mexico Open, where he finished 10th. In 2023, Rodgers finished 5th and 19th in his 2 events leading up to Vedanta and finished 10th. And then last year, Rodgers finished 79th at Pebble and missed the cut at Riviera before finishing 6th at the Mexico Open. I think he's on a fantastic trajectory in his game right now. But after the approach numbers last week, chipped it phenomenal at Torrey, did not hit his irons well. I'm going to be out on Patrick Rodgers this week at 25-1. We now move to Michael Kim, who opened at 28-1 on 365 and MGM. I would say the number is slightly off here for Michael Kim this week. 36-1 was my guess number after back-to-back top 15 finishes in Phoenix and last week at the Genesis. Kim finished second in Phoenix and then followed it up with a really steady week at Torrey Pines where he picked up shots across every statistical category. I know Kim has struggled at Vedanta in 2 appearances due to the driving, but that aspect of his game has really improved a lot since mid-November. And I believe this week will be the first time in his career that Michael Kim drives it well enough to stay around the top 25 of the leaderboard in Mexico. That said, I don't really like his outright number. So I went to the matchups, figured Michael Kim could be a great play as far as the matchups are concerned. And I don't like any of the matchups this week, but particularly on Michael Kim, I was not a fan of any of them. I don't like him facing Harry Hall, who is a coastal golf aficionado. I'm not looking to take Michael Kim over Sam Stevens, who's had a commendable start to the season, as we just talked about. We'll talk about Steven Yeager in a second, but he's far from a spot where it would be acceptable to fade him. I'm not looking to fade Kurt Kitayama with Michael Kim over at Caesars, since Kitayama finished tied second here a few years back and really hasn't been hitting the ball terrible. And I'm not interested in fading Aaron Rai at a course where he's recorded a few top 15s and Rai's game is nowhere near to being in a bad spot right now. So listen, I like Michael Kim this week, but the number's not right for me. Plus, I don't like any of his featured matchups. So I'm out on Michael Kim this week. Oh, we're now on to Steven Yeager, who opened at 30-1 on FanDuel and Caesars. This is only Yeager's second week in a row on the road since he skipped the Waste Management. Yeager hasn't finished better than 40th over his last 3 events, which is something I wouldn't worry too much about because he's finished top 20 at Vedanta in each of the last 3 times he's played this tournament. And once again, it really hasn't seemed to matter how he's playing in the lead-up because it's such a great course fit for him. And it's really not like Yeager has been too far off his game. He's picked up shots with the irons in 4 of 5 events this season. And he had the putter rolling for his first 4 events of the season up until a shaky week with the flat stick last week at Torrey Pines South. It's tough to be too concerned about his putting performance last week when it comes to this week because Paspalum is the only green surface where Yeager picks up shots to the field on average. Great putter on Paspalum. For Steven Yeager's iron play standards, he is absolutely heading in the right direction going into this week. As I said, the only event he lost shots with the iron so far this year was Farmers Week. And in 2 events since, the iron play for Yeager has been popping in a positive direction. And then you look at the way he's hit his irons at Vedanta over the last 3 years. And he's picked up shots with the irons in every appearance here. He's rolled it well at Vedanta in 2 of 3 starts, and he drives it with plenty of accuracy and distance to get in the mix here this week. I will have Steven Yeager to win at 30-1 on FanDuel as my second outright winner. We now move to Taylor Moore, who opened at 30-1 on DraftKings and Bovada. I'm going to completely ignore Moore's only appearance here back in 2022 where he missed the cut. It was at a different point in the season. Mexico Open followed the Florida swing in its inaugural year. It was not only at a different point in the year, but Taylor Moore's ball striking was not anywhere near the caliber that he's hitting it today going into the 2022 Mexico Open. He hasn't been perfect, but this is a one-time PGA Tour winner. And we hit him at the 23 Valspar at 70-1. This is a one-time PGA Tour winner who's playing fantastic golf with 2 top 10s over his last 4 starts. And as I said, he hasn't been perfect because he managed to finish 9th in Phoenix, having not picked up shots with the irons compared to the field. Now, he has been putting himself in position off the tee and making a ton of putts over his last 2 events. But what you worry about this week is the iron play, because that has not been elite to start this year for Taylor Moore. When you go look at what Moore was doing leading into the 2023 Valspar, his first win, you look at what Moore was doing leading into Tampa that week, and he had just put on an iron play clinic around the West Coast, and in the tournament before the 2023 Valspar, Moore finished 35th at the Players and had an extremely solid week with the irons around Sawgrass. And as aforementioned, he was hitting the irons at an elite level around the California swing that year. You fast forward to right now and you look at how Moore's irons were around the California swing, and there was definitely signs of greatness, but not at a consistent pace. It looked a lot like Tom Kim's iron play chart, honestly. Moore lost shots with the irons at the Sony, missed the cut. Moore put on an iron play clinic in Palm Springs, finished 9th. Moore struggled with the irons again at Torrey for the Farmers and finished 56th. He had a solid week with the irons at Pebble Beach and finished 22nd. And then he lost slightly with the irons in Phoenix, but his driving and short game were so pure he still managed to finish 9th. It's not quite in a place where I feel he can come win in a weak field this week, but with the way he's driving it and the way he's rolling it on the greens, I will be on Taylor Moore to top 20 at plus 170 on Bet365. Okay, there's no matchups this week, and I already gave you my one pick to place, which is Taylor Moore to top 20 at plus 170 on Bet365. We now move to our 3 outrights. I already gave you the first 2. Outright number 1 is Akshay Bhatia to win at 14-1 on DraftKings. Best player as far as Caribbean golf by a mile. That's outright number 1. And then outright number 2 is Steven Yeager to win at 30-1 on BetOnline. Outright number 3 is going to be Ricky Castillo to win at 100-1 on FanDuel. And Castillo is making his 3rd start of the season after graduating from the Korn Ferry Tour. He's only 23 years old, turned pro in 2023 after a historic college career at the University of Florida. And he won the first Korn Ferry Tour event he played, which was the 2023 Wichita Open, just a couple weeks after wrapping up his college career at the NCAA Division I Championship. Now, after that, Castillo could not find a fairway for the rest of 2023. Castillo is a massive bomber off the tee, but struggled in the later part of 2023 with the accuracy and was unable to qualify for the PGA Tour that year. He regained form in early 2024, played very well at some of the coastal golf courses on the Korn Ferry Tour schedule, like the Bahamas and like Panama. Castillo finished 20th in the Bahamas and 5th in Panama last year on the Korn Ferry Tour. He, once again struggled with the middle and later part of the Korn Ferry Tour schedule. Still earned his status on the PGA Tour largely thanks to what he did in the early part of last season, because he did not make a whole lot of noise once again in the latter part of last season, but still had enough points to get his PGA Tour card. And Castillo struggled in his first two events of this season at the Sony and at the American Express, despite driving the ball amazing. And in his most recent event, which was the Farmers, he finished 15th, where he finally picked up shots with the iron play for the first time in 3 events this season. He also picked up shots around the greens for the first time this season at Torrey, which I don't care about this week, as we'll talk about with Pod Jeter here in a second. But we are getting Ricky Castillo, a freak driver of the golf ball on a coastal golf course, fresh off a good week with the irons in his last start at Torrey. So for my third outright winner, I'll be on Ricky Castillo to win at 30-1 on FanDuel. Now, we're on to the sleeper, and the sleeper is going to be Aldrich Pot Jeter to top 20 at plus 320 on Bet365. And listen, this is not a numbers play whatsoever. We can talk all day about how Pot Jeter is one of the best drivers of the golf ball on the planet at just 20 years old. But his iron play has been fairly unimpressive since finishing second at the Nedbank, where we had him to win at 110-1. It was the only outright I gave out for the Nedbank. Came up short there as Pod Jeter's chipping just, threw up all over itself there down the final stretch of the Nedbank. But this course is one of the only solid looks for Pod Jeter until, maybe we get to Craig Ranch for the Byron. You kind of need a solid short game around Craig Ranch. So, I'm not sure if that's going to be a play. Maybe Myrtle Beach, maybe Detroit for the Rocket Mortgage in June. So it's a driver-friendly golf course. But this is the last course for a while where, Pod Jeter can go ahead and rear back with the driver and not worry about where it goes. And it's the last course for a while where he's not going to have to worry too much about the horrendous chipping motion. Joe Mayo needs to get Pod Jeter on the books ASAP. Because once he figures out the chipping, it's off to the races for this kid. But this is the type of course fit you're looking for when it comes to Aldrich Pod Jeter. The putting for Pod Jeter has been solid over his last 2 events. The driving has been amongst the best on tour. And he's fresh off a 15th place finish at the Farmers, where he had a chance going into the final round. Now, you're not going to get away with bad chipping in the big moment at Torrey Pines, but you can get away with it here at Vedanta. So for my sleeper this week, it's going to be Aldrich Pod Jeter to top 20 at plus 320 on Bet365. I've got 2 first-round tickets for you this week. First-round ticket number 1 is Alex Smalley at 5-1 to top 10 after round 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, I have my concerns about Smalley when it comes to the entire 72-hole tournament. Even though his distance is not a huge strength off the tee, his ball striking numbers do match up well on this golf course, and we've seen him play well to start the season with top 20 finishes at the Sony and the Amex, and he top 25 2 weeks ago in Phoenix. The only reason I don't have anything on Smalley for the week is, Pass Palom greens are the only surface where he loses shots on average to the field. But Smalley is off at 7:40 a.m. on Thursday morning. He's the second group off number 1. And he's in a group obviously in the morning wave, that it's going to totally miss out on all of the potential afternoon wind at Vedanta. And, Smalley has been commendable in opening rounds this year, clocking in at 25th on the first round standings on a 4-round sample size. Smalley has opened 68 or better in 3 of his first 4 events this season. So, first round ticket number 1 will be Alex Smalley at 5-1 to top 10 after round 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, folks, a quick break from the golf to tell you about what we have going on over at pregame.com. Use my coupon code this week, Mexico20. Once again, that's Mexico20 for 20% off all picks over at pregame.com. Have to get your March Madness futures in. Need to get your NBA playoff futures in. Have to kind of get ahead and get those MLB futures in. So head to pregame.com, click on buy picks, and use my coupon code Mexico20. Once again, that is Mexico20 for 20% off all purchases at pregame.com for listeners of this golf podcast only. All right, back to the golf. First round ticket number 2 is going to be Chris Gotterup at 7-1 to top 10 after round 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. And Gotterup is not a first-round specialist by any means, but he is a specialist when it comes to golf courses where you just get up on the tee and let it loose, kind of like, Dunes Golf and Beach Club where he won his first PGA Tour event last summer. This play really has nothing to do with how Gotterup has fared in first rounds this season. I mean, his low first round this year is a 67 at the Amex, but the fact is, I absolutely love Gotterup posting a low number with that early tee time on Thursday morning. And he's third off the box, off the first tee at 8:03 a.m. on Thursday. Now remember, Gotterup showed up to Mexico sick last year, fired 2 under in that opening round where he hit the ball great, and then had to withdraw prior to the second round because he was sick. Once again, this is a great course fit, and he's got an A+ tee time on Thursday morning. So first round pick number 2 will be Chris Gotterup at 7-1 to top 10 after round 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's move to these 2 lineups. The first one is going to be a DraftKings lineup with a $50K budget. I will take Akshay Bhatia first at 10.7K. I'll take Taylor Moore at number 2 at 9K. Jake Knapp will be number 3 at 8.6K. Knapp is the defending champion who has hit his irons beautifully over his last 3 tournaments. And, he picked up his first top 20 finish of the year at the Genesis last week, so we'll throw him in the lineup this week at 8.6K. I'll go with Aldrich Pot Jeter at 7.3K for number 4. Ricky Castillo will be in the 5 spot at 7.2K, and then we'll have Chris Gotterup at the caboose for 7.2K with a remaining salary of 0. Now for the PGA Tour.com lineup, you get 4 starters with 2 bench players. You'll need to make one of those players your captain for the week, so the points can double, and you can only pick a player 3 times over each quarter. Number 1, I will use Akshay Bhatia for the final time this quarter. He will be my captain. Number 2 will be Steven Yeager. Number 3 will be Ricky Castillo. Number 4 will be Taylor Moore. And then on the bench, ready to roll after rounds 1, 2, or 3 will be Jake Knapp and Aldrich Pot Jeter. As far as the scoring, the weather looks fantastic in Vallarta all week with lows in the mid-60s, highs in the mid-80s, with some solid afternoon breeze in the forecast, but nothing really that should impact scoring too much. My winning score prediction for this week will be 21 under par. And as far as the best bet, my best bet for the Mexico Open will be Akshay Bhatia at the top 10 at 2-1 odds over on Bet365. That'll do it for the Mexico Open preview. For the latest as far as the world of golf is concerned, you can follow me on X at drmedia59, and we'll talk to you next week, next Tuesday, before the Cognizant Classic as the PGA Tour moves on to the Florida Swing at PGA National.